Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to our channel, True Courtroom Stories. Today, we're diving into the amazing book, True Courtroom Stories, researched by Mr. Zahir Ahmad Mehr. We're going to uncover a fascinating piece of legal history, exploring how a market regulator from the ancient Mamluk Sultanate established principles of fair commerce that are, you won't believe it, still alive and kicking in our laws today.
So let me ask you something. Have you ever had that feeling? You know the one. You buy something, you're excited about it, you get it home, and it's just not what you were promised. Maybe it's broken, maybe it's not the quality you paid for. That sting of being wronged, of having your trust totally broken in a simple transaction, well, it turns out that's a timeless problem. People have been dealing with this for centuries.
To really get this, I want you to picture something. Let's travel back in time. Imagine we're standing in a vibrant, noisy, absolutely bustling marketplace in the Mamluk Sultanate. You can smell the spices and the fresh bread in the air. You can hear merchants shouting out their prices. Business is booming. It's organized chaos. But under all this amazing energy, a pretty serious crime is about to be exposed. And here it is, the heart of our story. We have a wheat merchant who's trying to make a dishonest profit. What's he doing? He's secretly mixing his good, premium grain with old, rotten stock. And the worst part? He's selling this tainted mix at full price to unsuspecting customers. Now, this isn't just some small-time scam. No, this is a huge deal. It's an act that threatens the very trust that holds the entire market together. If you can't trust the guy selling you wheat, who can you trust? Well, as you can probably guess, it doesn't take very long for people to figure out they've been cheated. The complaints start to bubble up. Whispers turn into angry chatter. But think about it. This is a world without modern police forces or consumer protection hotlines. So who had the authority to actually step in and do something? Who held the power to restore justice and make things right? Well, the Mamluks, it turns out, had a brilliant solution. They had a specialized office designed for this exact kind of problem. See, they understood that you couldn't just leave market fairness up to chance. No, they created a specific, dedicated role to police the marketplace and make sure everyone was playing by the rules. And this officer was called the Muhtasab. And let me tell you, this was not just some fancy title. The Muhtasab was a genuinely powerful judicial figure. You can think of him as the guardian of the market. His whole job, his whole mission, was to ensure fairness, maintain quality standards, and enforce ethical conduct among all the sellers. He was, quite literally, the ultimate authority on commercial integrity. Now here's what's so incredible. As I'm describing this, you might be thinking, hey, that sounds kind of familiar. And you'd be absolutely right. When you really look at what the Muhtasib did, you're basically seeing an early blueprint for the agencies we completely rely on today. Things like a competition authority that stops monopolies, or a consumer protection department that fights fraud, or even a local municipal regulator that makes sure public standards are being met. It all started here. Okay, so the problem's been identified. The customers are angry, and our regulator, the Muhtasib, is on the scene. The stage is set for a judgment. So what actually happens to our dishonest wheat seller? Let's take a look at the real price of his deceit.
The judgment was swift, it was comprehensive, and honestly, it was incredibly forward-thinking. First, boom, all of that fraudulent wheat was seized, gone. Second, a heavy fine was imposed. You have to make it clear that crime does not pay. Third, and this is so important, the merchant was ordered to provide restitution. He had to pay back the very people he had cheated. Fourth, he got a temporary ban from trading. Timeout. But here's the absolute game changer, the fifth step. The Muhtasib enacted new, market-wide rules demanding way more transparency from all sellers to try and prevent this from ever happening again.
And this, right here, is the crucial point. The Muhtasib's actions were never just about punishing one bad apple. The real goal was so much bigger. It was about protecting the entire system. It sent a powerful, crystal-clear message to every single other merchant in that marketplace. Trust is the real currency here, and anyone who messes with that trust is going to face serious consequences.
This whole judgment really established a powerful legal principle. Just stop and think about how profound this statement is. Commerce is lawful only when fair. Cheating voids the legality of trade. This isn't just some nice moral suggestion. No, this is a legal declaration. It's saying that fairness isn't optional. It's a requirement for a transaction to even be considered legitimate. This idea is the very bedrock of modern business ethics.
So,
Okay, that's what happened centuries ago. But how did this ancient principle manage to evolve into the laws we actually live under today? Well, the connection isn't just a coincidence. It's not a happy accident. It's a direct lineage of legal thinking that echoes powerfully in our modern world. Legal scholars have actually traced these principles, the ones enforced by the Multasib, directly to consumer protection laws we see all over the world. Take the EU's Consumer Rights Directive, for example. It basically says that goods have to be what the seller says they are. So if a seller delivers rotten wheat instead of good wheat, they've broken the contract. That is the exact same principle. Or look at Pakistan's Competition Commission, which actively investigates deceptive marketing practices. That's the modern-day fight against the exact same kind of fraud our wheat merchant was committing all those years ago. And this comparison just makes the legacy crystal clear. Let's just look at it side by side. Back then, the Muhattasib enforced market transparency. Today, our regulators uphold competition and transparency laws. The Muhattasib punished fraudulent merchants. Today's agencies investigate unfair trade practices. The core jobs, protecting citizens, setting fair rules, and ensuring basic fairness, these functions have endured for centuries. The names have changed, but the mission is the same. So why does any of this ancient history matter to you right now? Well, because the next time you buy a product with confidence, or you return something that's faulty, or you trust an online review, I want you to remember this story. That fundamental expectation you have, that you get what you pay for, that's not some modern invention. It is a right. And it's a right that's protected by a very old and a very powerful tradition of justice that started in a bustling marketplace a long, long time ago. And that really leaves us with one final thought to chew on. If these principles of transparency, fairness, and accountability were so vital for a physical marketplace, how do we apply them today? What ancient principles should guide our sprawling, complex digital marketplaces, where the seller can be totally anonymous and the product is just a picture on a screen? It's a huge question, and it's definitely worth thinking about. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe to our channel, give this video a like, and please share it with your friends.
All right, let's talk about something that affects pretty much everyone, every single day, whether you realize it or not. We're diving into EU consumer protection. You can think of it as this invisible shield that's got your back every single time you shop. So, let me ask you this. Have you ever been there? You're scrolling online, you see the perfect thing. The pictures look incredible, the description sounds like a dream, you hit that buy button. And then, the package shows up, and what's inside is not quite what you were expecting. Maybe it's a little bit off, or maybe it's a lot off.
Yeah, that feeling, it's just so frustrating, isn't it? It's that huge gap between what you were promised and what you actually got. It's more than just disappointment. It can feel like you've been misled. And honestly, it's the kind of thing that can make you totally lose trust in a brand, or even make you think twice about shopping online at all.
And look, we've all been there. It happens all the time. But here's the thing you need to know. You don't just have to put up with it, at least not in the European Union. Because here, there's a really powerful, really comprehensive system that was designed for this exact problem, to protect you. So what is this system? Well, the best way to think about it is like a giant protective shield. It's a whole legal framework that acts as a guardian, watching over your rights as a consumer. Its entire job is to make sure the marketplace you're dealing with is fair, safe, and totally transparent.
Okay, so let's get down to the nitty-gritty. What are we actually talking about here? At its heart, EU consumer protection is a whole set of rules. And these aren't just guidelines, they are binding rules, and they're enforced by the full power of the courts. The whole point, the entire reason it exists, is to make sure things are fair and to guarantee your safety whenever you spend your money on a product or a service.
Now, a shield like this doesn't just appear out of nowhere, right? It's built on 4 really solid foundations. You can call them the 4 pillars of fairness. These are the core ideas, the bedrock principles, that hold businesses accountable and keep the playing field level for everyone.
So let's walk through them, one by one. First up is fair competition. This is all about preventing monopolies and making sure you actually have choices. Then you've got anti-fraud rules, which are there to stop any kind of shady or deceptive business practices. Pillar number 3 is a big one, truth in advertising. A company can't just say their phone's battery lasts for 2 days if it really only lasts for half a day. What they say has to be true. And finally, you have product safety standards, which make sure that the things you buy, especially stuff like kids' toys, are safe and don't contain any harmful material.
Okay, that all sounds really good on paper, doesn't it? But, rules are only as good as the consequences for breaking them. So this brings us to the most important question of all: what actually happens when a company looks at these pillars and decides to just ignore them?
And this is where the system really shows its power. This is where we see the real teeth of consumer protection. Because this framework, this shield we've been talking about, it's not just a friendly suggestion. Oh no. It is backed up by some very, very serious consequences.
When a company steps out of line, a few things can happen, and none of them are good for the company. First, they can get hit with massive fines, and we're talking about amounts that can run into the millions. Second, they can be forced into a mandatory product recall, where they have to pull every single faulty product off the shelves across the entire continent. And third, they can be ordered to pay damages directly to the consumers they've harmed.
Yeah, and I really want to drive this point home. These are not just little slaps on the wrist. They're not just warnings. These are powerful, decisive enforcement actions. They're designed to make a real financial and reputational impact and to be a huge warning sign to any other company out there that's even thinking about cutting corners.
And what's so smart about this whole setup is how the punishment really fits the crime. You see it right here. If you lie in your advertising, you're looking at financial fines. If your product is unsafe, well, you're going to have to recall it. And if you break the rules of fair dealing and people get hurt by it, you could be on the hook for paying out damages. It's a really clear system of cause and effect. It's all about accountability. Okay, so we've talked about the big picture, the rules, the heavy penalties, but let's bring this back down to earth. What does this actually mean for you? Because this isn't some abstract legal theory. This is about the power you hold as a consumer and how this whole system makes a difference in your life, probably every single day. When you boil it all down, what's the point of all this? It's about one thing, really, confidence. It's about giving you the confidence to try out a new online store, the confidence to buy a new gadget, the confidence that the toys you buy for your kids are actually safe. It's a massive safety net that empowers you to make choices freely, knowing that there's this powerful framework in the background, making sure your rights are protected. Now, this is a strong system for sure, but the world doesn't stand still. The marketplace is constantly changing. So I'll leave you with this to think about. As we move deeper into a world of global online shopping, super targeted social media, and ads driven by artificial intelligence, what's the next big challenge? What's the next frontier for consumer protection? And what new threats will this shield have to learn to defend? In the world of commerce, there's a massive game being played every single day. It's this complex dance of supply, demand, and price that pretty much affects everything we buy. But what happens when the rules of that game get bent? What happens when some powerful players decide to rig it in their favor? Well, drawing on the absolutely fascinating research from Zahir Ahmad Mir's True CourtRoom Stories, we're going to pull back the curtain and look at the official guardian that stands watch over the marketplace, a force that's dedicated to making sure that game is played fairly for all of us. Oh, we've all been there, right? You're at the store, just doing your weekly shopping, and the price of something you buy all the time, could be sugar, chicken, cooking oil, whatever, has just shot through the roof. And there's no obvious reason why. No big news story, nothing. You're just left standing there in the aisle thinking, wait, what just happened? It's a super frustrating feeling. And you know what? It often points to a much bigger story that's happening just behind the scenes, a story that hits you directly in your wallet. So that feeling you get, it's not just in your head. It points to a very real and constant threat that's lurking inside the marketplace: manipulation. This is where really powerful players or even groups working together can rig the game. They might create fake shortages or fix prices in secret meetings. Basically, they rewrite the rules to benefit themselves. And who's left to pay for it? The average person, the everyday consumer, us. And look, this isn't just some theory, okay? This stuff has actually happened with huge consequences. If we go back to 2010, a massive investigation blew the lid off the fact that the Poultry Association was actively fixing the price of chicken. I mean, a basic food for millions of families. Just think about that for a second. A coordinated effort to control the price of a necessity. Then, a little over a decade later, it was like history repeating itself, but on an even bigger scale. A major inquiry found these powerful cartels were manipulating the supply and price of sugar. These huge cases, which are detailed in Mr. Mir's research, they showed a really clear and damaging pattern of unfairness that was directly hurting ordinary people. Okay, so with these kinds of powerful threats out there, who's supposed to step in and protect us? The consumers. When the game is rigged, who's the referee that's going to call a foul? Well, this brings us to the hero of our story, an institution that was specifically created and empowered to be the market's guardian, to stand up against all these hidden manipulations. Let's meet the Competition Commission of Pakistan, or the CCP. The easiest way to think of it is as the market's official watchdog. It was set up by law with one single vital mission: to make sure businesses compete fairly and honestly. And its job isn't just to punish people after the damage is done. It's to actively patrol the market, to spot and stop the exact kinds of practices we saw in those poultry and sugar cases. The CCP is there to protect the small businesses playing by the rules and, maybe most importantly, the millions of consumers like you and me who just depend on a fair and transparent marketplace.
Now, to be a really effective guardian, you can't just be reacting to problems all the time. You need a clear, enforceable set of rules, a kind of code of conduct that spells out what a fair market actually looks like. It's the difference between chaos and a system where everybody knows the boundaries. And the CCP, well, it operates on exactly that kind of code, built on a few really powerful principles designed to keep the playing field level for everyone.
So the CCP's rulebook basically boils down to 3 key pillars. First off, it prohibits any abuse of dominance. What that means is a gigantic company can't just use its size and power to unfairly crush smaller competitors or bully consumers. Second, it prevents deceptive marketing. This is all about making sure that what a company tells you about a product is the truth, so you can make choices based on facts, not lies. And third, it punishes unlawful price manipulation, which is the exact problem that was found in those big sugar and poultry cases, where companies were secretly conspiring to fix prices and rip off the public.
Now, when you hear these rules, you might think they sound super modern, right? Like something created for today's complex global economy. But what if I told you that the spirit behind these laws, this fundamental drive for justice in the marketplace, is anything but new? What if these principles are actually rooted in a tradition of market justice that goes back centuries?
The connection to history here is honestly pretty mind-blowing. The CCP's modern legal principles are almost a perfect mirror of the ancient Islamic tradition of Hisbah. Now, Hisbah was this really sophisticated system for supervising markets and ensuring fairness in commerce. So, preventing the abuse of power, that directly mirrors the Hisbah tradition of stopping monopolies and making sure deals were fair. Banning deceptive marketing, that lines up perfectly with the old principle of upholding honesty and checking weights and measures. And punishing price manipulation, that's just a modern version of preventing hoarding to create fake shortages. It's the same timeless quest for fairness, just wearing a modern suit.
So this brings us to the real heart of the matter. We've talked about the rules, the guardian that enforces them, and their deep historical roots. But why are they so important? I mean, what is truly at stake when a market becomes unfair? The cost, it turns out, is way bigger than just a few extra rupees at the checkout.
This one powerful line, which really captures the core legal reasoning from Mr. Mir's analysis, it says it all. A market isn't just a place to make money. It's a complex human system that's built on a foundation of trust. And when that trust gets shattered by widespread exploitation, the entire system starts to crumble. Fairness isn't a luxury. It's not some nice-to-have ideal. It is the absolute bedrock that a healthy, thriving economy is built on. Without it, the market itself is in danger.
And that leads us to the final, really sobering takeaway from this whole story. See, the problem of an unfair market goes way beyond just your personal bank account or even the national economy. When cheating becomes a widespread, accepted way to make a profit, it starts to eat away at the moral fabric of a society. It creates this culture of cynicism, where short-term, selfish gain is valued way more than long-term collective well-being. And as the research powerfully concludes, that is a path that doesn't lead to prosperity, it leads to social decay, and eventually to ruin.
So that leaves us with one final question. And this one turns the lens back on all of us. If an institution like the CCP is the market's official guardian, then what's our role as the consumers and citizens who are part of this market every single day? How do our choices, how does our awareness, and our collective demand for honesty and transparency, how does that help build and protect that essential foundation of fairness? It's definitely something to think about long after this explainer.